A very good morning, folks. Welcome to the Rangers Review morning briefing on Wednesday, the 20th of November. I'm Derek Clark and I'm joined for the first time this week by Chris Jack. How's it going, Chris?
All good, Derek. As we were saying just before we press the live button, it's a chilly old morning. We're officially at the Long John stage of the campaign.
Yeah, we certainly are. The heating has been cranked up in the Clark household, that's for sure. Frosty morning down here in Warrington. The layers are well and truly on. But let's talk about Rangers. That'll heat us all up, I am sure. First of all, there's quite a few things to talk about today. Before we do that, Chris, the big news yesterday, of course, just before we came on air, was that Niels Koppen has been promoted to technical director. He'll not only oversee the club's transfer strategy, but also the medical side of things, the academy, football operations, performance and analysis departments as well. Now, it's fair to say the reaction, certainly on social media, was largely negative to this move yesterday. How do you see it? And what's your view on that decision yesterday to promote within and appoint Niels Koppen as technical director?
I think everything I'm about to say is almost couched in the fact that I do like Niels. I think he has been a sensible appointment. I've dealt with him a couple of times, always found him to be really interesting, to be really open, really honest, been a great guy to catch up with at games or on trips. I do like him. I do think he will do good things for the football club. Should he have been given this role right now? For me, no. I think it's too big too wide ranging a remit just for one man to do. He has also never done a lot of these roles previously, and it goes back to almost what Rangers have done previously. You're promoting people into roles, hoping that they're going to succeed in them, with no evidence that they are at that stage of their careers fully equipped for them. The comparison that I saw a number of times yesterday was James Bisgrove. And there's been other examples right throughout the club over recent seasons. So I say, as much as I do like Niels and any criticism of this move, it's not directed at him personally. I just don't see how the club can go down this route at this particular time when there's so much else on the go. This appointment should have been made by a chairman and a chief exec once they're in and they've had a proper review of the business, a proper review of the football structure. And I just don't see why this had to be done right now. I think we've discussed the last few weeks about Rangers. They need more football people in the club. They need more football experience. They needed, for me, a director of football. I know Josh has got a piece coming on the site at some point this morning, looking into this deal and perhaps how the rest of the structure could unfold. I would like to see more football people brought into the club.
Yep.
Right now, I would have left Niels in charge of the recruitment side of it, and I would have brought in some more people to oversee their respective areas. It's a big shift away from what the club have been operating like over the last couple of seasons. To use a John Bennett phrase, they gave the keys to an individual. They then decided to give the keys to a process. That's why the football board was implemented, why it was created, why you had the likes of the manager on there, the chairman on there, but you then had the individual heads of department, whether that be the academy, whether that be sports science or medical, as it was with Dr. Waller. And for me, that was a good setup. I think it allowed people with their specialities to go and run their respective departments and then feed into a collective rather than giving one man too much power. I think Rangers have been stung by that previously, and you have to say they're still paying the price of that in terms of other people that have held positions of influence there over recent seasons. So for me, I like that setup. Now they've also lost a number of individuals from that. Those individuals had to be replaced. As I said, I'd like to have seen a sporting director come in there. So it's not to say that Niels can't go and do this job. He may well be the type of guy, and I think he is. He's driven, he's motivated, he's clearly invested. He looks like the kind of guy that could go and do this job, but we look at where Rangers are and how significant it is. I would like to have seen someone who's actually got a track record of doing it, rather than hoping that someone can be a chief exec, rather than hoping that someone can go from a first team coach to a Rangers manager, rather than hoping that someone can go from a recruitment head to, in effect, a director of football with remits in so many areas. I would like to have seen someone that's actually got that particular track record. So I do understand the reaction to it yesterday. It was not overwhelmingly positive. And again, I think a lot of that was a frustration about so many other areas at the club. I don't think it was a negative on Koppen as such. I don't think people are upset that he's got the job. I think they're upset at how it's kind of come about and what it actually means.
Yep, agreed with that one. There's many points coming in. Nevitt says, agree, Kris, why announce this before the CEO and chairman? And a number of people were saying this yesterday on the video. Of course, Rangers have been tight-lipped with regards to that. They did say in their statement yesterday that Koppen, alongside the manager and the women's football director, will be reporting to the CEO when they are appointed. There was murmurings that it is moving along and nearing some sort of completion stage, Kris, but no official word from the club as yet on the CEO and the chairman at this point in time. I know John Gilligan, when he came out and gave that interview to ourselves and the other media outlets in that press conference, and also to Sky, he says the hope was to have someone in before Christmas time. Where are the club with regards to those two roles?
In terms of the chief exec, not heard a lot on that one of late. Still something looking towards those timescales that John outlined. And I think as we've discussed previously, it was, or the thing you always had to have in mind was, is there a notice period that someone would have to work? So just you could go and appoint someone on Monday. Doesn't mean to say that they can start first thing Tuesday morning. So I think that it will be some time yet before the chief exec is actually in and been through that process of, here's what I've actually walked into in a business sense, and here's what I've walked into in a football sense. And we know full well what the next couple of weeks could hold for Rangers in a football sense, and some of the decisions that chief exec could have to make fairly quickly. Chairman, I believe, is progressing well. I do expect that to be soon. That appointment will be the first one. That's definitely going to be the one that is announced first and in place. And obviously, we're looking at the AGM in what, three weeks or so now.
That'll be interesting.
It should be interesting. I think we often talk these things up and say the shareholders and the fans, they'll go, and it's a chance to actually hear other directors speak that you never actually hear from. It's a chance to hold them to account. And how many times have we walked away from them thinking that was all just a bit bland and a bit nothing? Yeah. I don't think the format helps at times. The Q&A format of it is very difficult unless you have people that are organised and can actually put pertinent points and can then come back in with a pertinent point. It can become quite easy for directors to kind of weasel their way out of actually answering questions properly. So I think I'd be wary about talking up the EGM too much. I don't think we're going to get fireworks just because we very rarely do. But I would hope and I would think that we would have a Rangers chairman by that stage. I think it's really important that they do have someone in, and that EGM does become the first chance for the new chairman to address the shareholders and the supporters directly.
Are you surprised that this appointment, that the Koppen appointment, has been made before these positions have been filled, Kris?
Yes, because it looks, it's a big strategy move, and as outlined earlier on, it's a big move away from what had previously been in place. Now, obviously, John Bennett is no longer Rangers chairman, but he had a big say and a big input in how the club was operating, obviously, and this new structure. He felt that Rangers had been burned by their previous way of operating. He wanted to go down a different road, wanted to do something different. And as I say, I think there was merit in it. It looks like they're not going to stick with that particular structure. Certainly, if you're going to appoint Koppen in these roles, it's got such a wide-ranging remit. It's going from a guy who was only doing recruitment to now having to take on a lot of other areas. Some areas, as I say, I think people will question how much experience and expertise he has in some of those areas. That's not to say he won't have good ideas. That's not to say that he won't be able to have an influence and have a positive impact. Hopefully he does, because there's a lot of room for improvement in a number of these particular sectors for Rangers. It just feels like it's a bit getting things in the wrong order. It should be chairman, chief exec. They then get a chance to review everything, and you then do director of football, sporting director. You then perhaps do Koppen as a technical director with a slightly lesser remit than the one that he's been given. You then do head of academy. You then perhaps get another couple of people in and around the club. And I think that then gives Rangers a bit more structure. It looks like it's being spread a wee bit too thinly for me right now.
Of course, your good self and Stevie will be recording an episode of The Talking Point this week, which will look at Koppen's responsibility with regards to the academy, which will be an interesting watch. You had some interesting things to say with regards to that. I like the idea of bringing in ex-Rangers players to help the young lads coming through. Now, Kris Boyd has, fair to say, let rip at the current academy at this moment in time, and the promotion of Niels Koppen. Told the Scottish Sun, I don't know where to start, who made the decision. There's no CEO. I just don't know who's making the decisions. There's nobody above him. Why would you give someone a promotion when you don't have someone above them? What happens if you appoint a CEO and there are problems with Koppen and the CEO? I'm not saying that will happen, but what if it does? They are important. The other thing you touched on as well was getting more ex-players involved. I've got to be honest, I just feel as if what the fans are saying, I just feel it's what the fans are saying, and it seems the right thing to say for Koppen. You only need to look on social media. This is not an appointment the fans are enamoured with. They're not looking at it saying we're absolutely delighted. You've got to earn the right to that promotion. There's nothing to suggest that Niels Koppen has earned this. He might be a good guy. You're telling me he's highly thought of behind the scenes. Right now, the fans only see what has come through the door, and it's not been good enough. It's not been good enough. The recruitment is a million miles away from where it should be. You have to remember as well the things that were said in the remit back in the summer, or even when Niels Koppen came in. There should be a guarantee, and he said there should be a guarantee there are more Scots in that team. There should be players coming through the academy. That's not something that's new, because you're now in this role. You need to be seen saying the right things. That should just be the remit, but right from the football club. You're spending absolute bombs, fortunes on the youth academy. So some interesting things said there from Kris Boyd on the appointment of Niels Koppen as technical director. Without going too much into the youth academy side of things, Kris, and stealing you and Stevie's thunder, I'm a big fan of getting more ex-Rangers players involved in that side of things. There's legitimate concerns surrounding the academy and the players that are coming through. I know that Kris Boyd has said that perhaps is the coaching not good enough? Why is the players that are coming through, we're not seeing Barry Ferguson, if you like, and those top quality players coming through and staking a claim in the first team? There certainly has to be a proper root and branch review, if you like, of the academy, where it's going wrong for Rangers, because it's simply not doing what it says on the tin, really, is it, at this moment in time?
No, it has to be more productive in terms of players coming through and making it at Rangers. It has to be more productive in terms of players coming through and then being sold. And it also has to, I think, be more productive in terms of players coming through and all, like, feeding through the rest of the Scottish game. And that's something that Niels touched on yesterday. I had a piece on the website a couple of months ago looking at the past couple of years of the Rangers Academy, where it is, where it's potentially heading, some of the problems, and speaking to people for that one, it's actually quite enlightening of just where Rangers are, because I've done these academy pieces for a number of years, and the comparison is always made. We've got great facilities, we've got great coaches, the players are there up to a certain level, but they then just can't make that gap, or they can't bridge that gap into the first team, and too many players don't. We saw Nathan Patterson do it very successfully. Apart from that, can you name half a dozen over the last 10 years or so that have made it? It's just not.
The thing is, Kris, ones that are, I mean, the likes of Rory Wilson, of course, went to Villa. Billy Gilmore's another one. If they are really good, more often than not, they get pinched from clubs down south, don't they? So it's one of those ones. It's difficult.
And that was one of the kind of key points that actually came about from writing that piece. It's the opportunities just aren't there. So if you are someone as talented as Billy was at that age, or Rory Wilson, you're looking at the pathway. If you like youth academy, people always speak about pathways. You look at that pathway. Is it actually there at Rangers? Because you know there's a structure there, and you'll get game type up to a certain level. You then you're right on that brink. You feel at 16, 17, 18, you should be making that first team transition. Is that pathway actually there? For too many players, it's not, and that's why, like Billy made that decision. Rightly, obviously, that's why Rory Wilson made that decision, and that's the danger that Rangers face going forward. You could have a kid at 12, 13, 14 who is exceptional, who really looks the part, but when they get a couple of years older and they've got a decision to make, are Rangers the decision right now? Are Rangers the obvious decision right now? And the answer is just not. It's not all Rangers' fault. Now there are problems with the youth structure. We know that the club have done a lot to try and change it. One of the things I mentioned in that piece actually was conversations that Stuart Robertson and Craig Mulholland at that time had with a number of clubs. They produced like white papers, if you like, and produced PowerPoints and produced a whole body of evidence to suggest this is why the structure at youth level has to change. And they tried to go to all the clubs in Scotland and say, look, this is what we think. Can you come on board with us? Can we try it? Can we try something different? A couple of the clubs, from memory, I think it was Dundee and East Fife, I need to double check in that piece. A couple of the clubs said not interested, didn't even pick up the phone and get back to them. And a number of clubs were of the opinion of, if it's going to benefit Rangers, it's of no use to us. Completely missing the point of, as I touched on earlier on, if you produce a Rangers player that is head and shoulders above everyone, and he's successful for the Rangers first team, that clearly benefits Rangers. The huge majority of players that come through the academy are not going to be at that level. They then filter down. They are your Hearts players, your Motherwell players, your Partick Thistle players, your Dumbarton players of tomorrow. But they are at a higher standard because they've had a higher level of coaching, they've had higher levels of experience, higher levels of competition. And Rangers, and that was maybe 2, 3, 4 seasons ago, Rangers found these barriers, they found these obstacles in the rest of Scottish football, and they couldn't do anything about it. So there are problems, I think, in terms of players coming through the academy. Is it all Rangers' fault? No, because there are wider structural and ingrained issues within Scottish football. And ultimately, if Scottish football doesn't want to help itself, Rangers can only keep making that case so often before you're banging your head off a brick wall, unfortunately.
Yep, absolutely. So yeah, like I say, folks, Kris and Stevie will be recording the Talking Point, available for those of you that are members of the Rangers Review Extra channel. First of all, so keep your eyes peeled for that. As we've touched on many times before, and James bringing it up again, this is what I would go with. Need a return to reserve football. Absolutely would bring it back in a heartbeat, but it doesn't look like returning anytime soon, unfortunately. Another point I wanted to bring up, of course, we're now coming to the end of the international break, the last of the calendar year. Hip hip hooray. A number of players representing their countries now travelling back to Auchenhowie to rejoin the Rangers first team squad. Now, one player who will be returning is Yanis Hagi. He has been told by his Romania manager, Mircea Lucescu, to leave the club. Speaking to a Romanian media outlet, he says, yes, of course, I advised him. How could I not? It's not the first time. I also told him that I would give him his chance to play, but he has to go to another team where to play effectively. He played well, and I congratulate him. This was after Romania's 4-1 win over Cyprus, in which Hagi received the Man of the Match award and set up one of the goals. Spoke about this a bit yesterday with Joshua, Kris, about Hagi coming back. I'd be looking to start him on Saturday. I'd get him in the team. Rangers need that sort of creative spark for me. They don't have enough players that gets bums off seats. And I think Hagi could be that creative spark against Dundee United at the weekend. I know he get banned for a number of games after his red card in his return game against St Johnstone. I would like to have seen more of him in a Rangers jersey. Do you reckon we'll see him at the weekend? And what do you make of these comments from the Romania manager?
I think if we don't see more of him over the next 2-3 weeks, the Romanian manager may well get his wish come a January window. It feels like a really defining couple of weeks for Giannis Hagi, and potentially for a couple of others as well. You look at the fixtures that Rangers have got coming up. Obviously, you know how difficult the European ones are. Hagi clearly also not involved in that squad, so you can take him out of those ones. You then look at some of the domestic ones. Every one a must win, including the cup final. Heading into the new year, Old Firm game in the league, Rangers need to be point perfect. Anything less than that, they can forget the title. I think, even though a number of us have already written it off already, but that would leave them with a huge. If they drop anything else, it could potentially leave them with a gap to Aberdeen that is just insurmountable in the second half of the season. I wrote a piece about Hagi, I think it was last week. Looking at his situation, he actually spoke to Rangers TV and did his first interview since coming back. And as always, I thought he spoke really well. You can tell that he's invested in the club. You can tell he's invested in himself. I do like him. Is he the answer to all of Rangers' problems right now? No. But could he be a potential answer to some of them? I think so, yes. I think he is. He's got the ability, he's got the mentality. I don't think he's going to start every single week. But again, you look at this run of fixtures coming up. If he can't play in some of these games, if he can't be the difference, if he can't start some of them, if he can't get at least half an hour in some of them, then I think we can say the writing's on the wall in terms of his Rangers career. We know what Rangers are going to face, starting with United this weekend. We know what they're going to face a number of these games. We know how important it is. You need players that can step up in those moments. Now, we've spoken before about Rangers being a moments team, being an individuals team. They don't have those phases of play that continually cut teams open and create a barrel load of chances and score a whole lot of goals. They do rely on individuals to provide those game-changing, match-winning moments. Hagi has that in his locker. Is he going to be your starting number 10 over the next coming weeks? I don't think so. Can he have more of a role than, to go back to the last game, Kieran Dill, for example, coming on ahead of him? I think that was a sub that really raised a lot of questions about Giannis Hagi's future at Rangers in these next couple of weeks. If he's not playing, he will surely be thinking, is Rangers the right club for me? Do I have to move on? But as the summer showed, that's easier said than done. It wasn't exactly inundated with offers over the summer. That's why they then had the situation when he played for the B team. Why then had the situation with his contract standoff issue was then resolved. So it's one thing saying play him or lose him. You might not necessarily lose him all that easily. But the more he does internationally and has had another good break with Romania, that's also good for brand Hagi, if you like, and certainly good for his potential options come the January window if that's required.
Yeah, I just look at Rangers and there's no doubt about it. One of the most boring Rangers teams I've seen for quite some time, if not ever. So Hagi, for me, is someone that can excite. As you touched on, Kris, don't think he's necessarily the overall answer to Rangers' problems, but he's someone that you enjoy watching when he's on form. And if he's doing the business for his national team, then surely he's good enough for a starting role in this turgid Rangers side. Let's get to some of the comments that are coming in, because a number of them on Hagi. Aldo says Hagi is a better option than Lawrence or Diamandi at 10. Hard to disagree with that. James Quinn with the point, feels sorry for Hagi, but looks like he's not wanted. Crazy decision, in my opinion. Nicky gets in touch as well, says Hagi turned into prime Riquelme this international break. Good stuff. What a player he was, by the way, if you never watched him in action. Tore Rangers apart. Well, saying that, he didn't really. The Villarreal game, remember when he played in that midfield. Rangers, I've just touched on Kris Boyd there. If Boyd had put that in, then Rangers could well have been progressing to the quarter-finals of the Champions League 2006, I think it was, 2005-06 season. But Riquelme was starting in that Villarreal team. Oh, those were the days. Jason Cundy as well said he's very optimistic about that upcoming League Cup final. He says, I think we'll win the Cup final. I admire your optimism, Jason. I'm slightly apprehensive about that game, I've got to be honest. Rangers need to improve quite a fair bit for me to win that game. But you touched on there, Chris, Clermont hasn't tasted success in an Old Firm game as yet. The magnitude of this League Cup final is monumental. But prior to that, you touched on there, this next round of fixtures coming thick and fast, of course. Dundee United at Ibrox on Saturday. Then you go to Nice on Thursday, which will be a good little jaunt. St Johnstone a week on Sunday up in Perth. Rangers then host Kilmarnock before a trip to Dingwall. And then Tottenham come to Ibrox in that Europa League match on the 12th of December. The League Cup final on the 15th, and then Rangers taking on Aberdeen. No, not Aberdeen, sorry. That game get rearranged, of course, Dundee the following week. That's huge, that game, isn't it? I mean, if it makes it to that League Cup final, it would be huge for Clermont himself, and just to get one over Celtic. I can't see at this moment in time, Chris, I've got to be honest. I think Celtic are so far and away ahead of Rangers at this moment in time that I can only see one outcome. But can Rangers win this game?
Can they? Yes, because anything can happen. You could never say that they couldn't. Will they? I think that's a different question. Balance of probabilities is that Rangers don't, because they've shown very, very few signs over the course of the season that they can. I think it shows the significance of that game for the club, for the squad, certainly for the manager, certainly for the supporters, that people are already talking about it a month out. Now that shows just how important that afternoon is going to be. It's a cup final. It's a one-off game. But to use all the old cliches about form going out the window and all the rest of it, Rangers could turn up and win that game. But obviously discuss it a lot more heading into it. I don't think you'll get many fans being overly optimistic. Rangers, they need, over these next couple of weeks, they need to start showing the fans something to give them any belief heading into that cup final. I say drop anything else in terms of the Premiership, life becomes even more difficult than they've already made it for themselves. And I don't think you can underestimate the importance of that Celtic game for the manager. If he was to lose another Old Firm game, it's safe to say he doesn't have a lot of credit in the bank with a number of fans right now. That whatever credit is still left, you lose another Old Firm game. That winless run in the Old Firm, if that continues, it's a long way back, and I think it's probably an impossible way back for him at that stage. And people in positions of power then have to make big decisions.
Right, that'll do us there. Big thanks to Chris as ever, and thank you to you all for tuning in to the show. Another heads up for those of you that are extra members on the channel, our weekly Q&A show is back this week. I'm on with Adam around about 1 o'clock this afternoon, so we hope you can join us for that, folks. I'll pop the link out on the community page in a wee while, inviting you to send your questions in. You more often than not deliver. Well, you always deliver. What am I saying there? So get your questions in. Myself and Adam will get through as many as we possibly can. Right, if we don't speak to you later, enjoy your Wednesday. Bye for now.